know that it doesn't work. The parents know that that's not working. The dog knows that it's not working. But who doesn't know that it's not working? The child. So when will the child change their behavior? When they figure out that what they're doing is not working. All right? This is related to diversity and working intergenerationally. I want you to know that I'm on the right path. So I just want to keep you focused on that. But people don't change their behavior until they recognize that there needs to be some kind of change in that behavior. All right? So here are some keys to my approach of working with folks. First, I know that people can learn, change, and grow. And they typically learn, change, and grow in the area of their strength. So what they're good at, they typically get better at doing that. Where we're not as strong, we typically learn how to manage that more effectively, right? But we learn the most in the areas where we have strengths. That all human behavior is goal-directed. That any time that we're doing something, there is a purpose behind it. Even if it's not cognitively in the front of our mind, we have a purpose or a rationale for doing the things that we do. Next, people do what makes sense to them, even if it doesn't make sense to who? You, right? Making sense to you has no bearing on why and how people try to accomplish their goals. Next, attitude is a response to a goal. All right? What have you been taught about what an attitude is? What have you been taught about what an attitude is? What is an attitude? Okay, it's a learned behavior, it's a response. What were you going to say, sir? Okay. Have you been accused of having an attitude at any point? Right? We've often been accused of having an attitude, and I remember as a teenager, my parents would say I had a lot of attitude. And so they would send me to my room and they'd say, boy, go to your room till you learn how to act. And I'd be in my room for a while, and then I'd step out and I'd say, to be or not to be? I spent a lot of time in my room. But that wasn't what they were talking about. And it took me a long time to figure it out because I don't know that they were as articulate as they could have been around telling me what an attitude was. And then one day I figured it out. So on Sunday, my dad was my pastor. And so on Sunday, we would go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We'd stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So Sunday is church all day. So I asked my dad to borrow the car Friday night. And because my dad loves me, what does he say? No. Oh, he loves me. He says yes. So I get the keys. I go hang out with my friends. I put gas in the car. I come in before curfew. And my dad says, I have what kind of an attitude? A good attitude or a positive attitude. Consequently, what do I say about my dad's attitude? He's got a good attitude as well, right? So I have a good attitude, he has a good attitude. Sunday, my best friend Dexter calls me and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sunday? Church all day, right? But Jesus is my friend. So I'm going to ask Jesus for a favor this one time, right? So I'm like, okay, Jesus, hook a brother up. And so I go to my dad and I say, Dad, I asked him, I said, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? No. Not only does he say no, but he gives me the lecture about how I'm leading people to hell. In my household, every negative consequence, the ultimate consequence was going to hell. And either you could take yourself there or my father would be obliged to send you. And so now, what does my father say about my attitude? That it's a bad attitude. And now what do I say about my dad's attitude? That he has a bad attitude. So what is it that actually determines an attitude? Starts with G and ends in O. Your goal determines your attitude. For example, anyone been around teenagers, right? When you give a teenager what they want, it's almost as if they purr, right? They want to cuddle, and they even get a little drool in the corner of their mouths, right? Because they've achieved what they wanted. Have you ever denied a teenager what they wanted? Funkiest attitude, and it's just so nasty. You're like, this came out of me? This is part of me? Right? Yeah. Did I raise that boy? So when we accomplish our goals, we have good attitudes, and when we don't accomplish our goals, we have bad attitudes. So as folks who interact with the public, this is an important thing to remember or to know, right? So if you have a client or a member of the community who is interacting with you and they have a bad attitude, what is the one thing that you know about them for sure? That they are not accomplishing their goal. All right? And so as a helper, as a person who gets paid to be of assistance, that's when you start kicking in. And there are two responses that you can have to someone who has a bad attitude. The first is to do what? Okay, so we're going to fight fire with fire, right? We'll all be burnt up. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. We'll be blind and toothless. Right? First I know that this person with a bad attitude is not accomplishing their goal. So using that same logic, if there's something that I can do to help them get a good attitude, which is what? Help them reach their goal. All right? So if I can help them reach their goal, then they will have a good attitude, and I have fulfilled my mission in life. Yay! All right? However, what if their goal is not reachable, or given the confines of my responsibilities, it's not anything I can do about that? Then what do I do as a helper? Say it again. I heard it over here. Help them change their goal. Right? Because if I give somebody a goal, what are they going to do with that? If I pushed you in the hallway, what's your natural reaction? To push back, right? So if I give somebody a goal, they typically won't accept it. But part of my job is to help them find a new goal. And that will change their attitude. Is that helpful? Does that make sense? Okay, cool. This is related to generational diversity and those things. So I just want to make sure we tie that stuff together. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about what diversity is not, and then offer you a new way of thinking about diversity. Because we are now in the promised land. But we got to slay some giants and some monsters so that we can relax and enjoy our milk and honey. All right? So first of all, diversity is not political correctness. A lot of times, first of all, what is political correctness? Has anyone ever heard of that term before? Okay, so what is political correctness? Saying the right thing. Saying something without offending someone else. What else? Has anyone, because I've come to a point to start to understand that political correctness is actually just a bad joke. Right? I mean, because janitors aren't janitors anymore. They're custodial engineers. And I'm all about, giving titles and propping up things, but they have to be worthy to be propped up. Right? I'm still trying to figure out what's the difference between people of color and colored people. But that's just me. I'm just trying to figure that out. That's just me. Right? So it's not about political correctness. Because I recall being in a training at the county, actually, and a woman stands up and she says, "Andre, I want to know why all the colored people are moving into my neighborhood." And how do you think the audience responded when she stood up and asked that question? Were you guys there? That's exactly what they did, right? They gasped. Oh. And why did they do that? Because, she wasn't using the right words. She wasn't being politically correct. However, as she stood there and I looked at her, it was very apparent to me that she did not have a lot of stamps in her passport. That she didn't have the fancy lexicon and the fancy way of speaking and all this kind of stuff. And so she asked a question that other people in the room had, and she asked it from a pure heart. So what was my responsibility to her in terms of responding to her question? I answered her question. I can pull her aside later and talk about the political correct stuff and blah, blah, blah. But I was more important in making sure that her heart was intact because she was courageous. And I wanted to honor her courageousness. Because I've also been in contact with people who have political correctness down to a science. But as they're speaking to you, your skin just crawls with disgust because you can hear the darkness and the nastiness in their heart. Right? So diversity is not about political correctness. It's also not about blame and guilt. How many people have been in diversity training of some sort, either in a class or as a part of your work? Please raise your hand. Okay. You are the people I have to heal. Because all too often in diversity conversations, they are so filled with blame and guilt. You know, white people are bad, and people of color are noble for suffering with white people. Right? What I would like to offer is that do babies care who changes them? No. You change a baby, they're just as happy as they want to be. And we've been spending way too much time blaming, illegitimate parents, because kids are always legitimate, on the birth of this racism and sexism and homophobia and bigotry, religious bigotry. We've been pointing way too many fingers instead of actually dealing with the baby. All right? Diversity is not about therapy. It's not just about the racial construct of black and white, because there are much more diverse issues that we have to talk about in terms of diversity, that it just doesn't boil down to black and white. And also that's an artificial racial construct that we've created to identify people differently. Right? Genetically, there is no real difference between so-called black folks and so-called white folks. Now, there is a difference between someone from the Iron Range and someone from the city. But that's a whole another training. That's another training. Also, diversity is not meritocracy. And meritocracy is basically the concept that if you work hard enough, you can be just like me. Why is that problematic? Yeah, maybe you don't want to be like me. Right? How do I get to set the standard of what it is to be normal or to be successful? It would be a shame for LeBron James to have to play basketball the way I do. Right? That would be horrible. So it's not about meritocracy, because there are also barriers that oftentimes keep people from actually achieving so-called success as a dominant group might define it. And lastly, diversity is not about tolerance. What does tolerance mean? To deal with, to accept. What else does tolerance mean? To ignore, okay? To accept anything that goes. All right. So what I like to offer, and I'd say diversity is not about tolerance, and people get nervous when I talk about that because people build their careers on this. There are books about it. We talk about it in church. We talk about it in school, in temple, in synagogue, and we're always about this tolerance. My brother-in-law came to visit. I tolerated that dude. Why? I knew when he was going home. Tolerance means to put up with until we no longer have to. Are our communities getting any less diverse? I would say no. Are our human relations getting more complicated? I would say yes. And so tolerance is not the end-all be-all. It's like standing on the cliff without going into the actual promised land. And so what I would hear some of you saying, is it political correctness a good thing? Is it meritocracy that people try to work up to where the rest of us are and put in good effort? Isn't that a good thing? And isn't tolerance like a good first step? And my response to you is that babies drink milk. And why do babies drink milk? Because it's nourishment. It's the earliest form of nourishment. And so tolerance and meritocracy and political correctness are great first steps. But at some point, babies move from milk to tofu. I prefer the bean curd myself. But we move from the simplest things to more complicated ways of digesting information. And so what I'd like to offer you is something that's a bit more sophisticated than these old things, but a lot more simple than we give ourselves credit for. All right? So I like Wheel of Fortune, so I put a Wheel of Fortune puzzle up here, and I want to see if you can solve it. All right? So when you have the phrase, the word or phrase, or the words, just go ahead and blurt them out. That's right. Dignity and honor of being human. And so as we talk about our generational work, and we talk about dealing with the public, we talk about how to interact with all these multitudes and facets of communities that are moving into Minnesota, I cannot be expected to know everything about everybody. Like we have this huge influx of people from Burma. I thought Burma had changed its name from something else to something else, but now it's back to Burma. So how am I supposed to know about everything about these people? And the fact of the matter is, I'm not supposed to. I can't. But I will do what I can do, which is these four things. And so first of all, what is dignity? Treating someone as an equal. Dignity. It's respect, okay? Dignity. I heard self-respect, okay? Is dignity something that you have or something that you can give? It is in fact both, right? Dignity basically says you have the right to exist, and that's okay. Many of you probably see these folks on the side of the road as well as I do. And they're the people with the signs, the cardboard signs. And typically what's written on their cardboard signs? We'll work for food. What else? Homeless, need help. Need a drink. Okay, when they're honest. Right? What else is written on those signs? Okay, family to feed. You know, sometimes they ask for money. Right? And so I see those people and I give them tons of things. And what do you think that I give them? I give them dignity. And the reason I give them dignity before I give them cash is because it's part of my belief that they oftentimes feel invisible to the larger community. And so whenever I get a chance, and I don't encourage you to do this unless you're in a safe situation, but I'll crack the window and have a conversation with them. I'll give them a card for some resources that I have from the county. If you need something, here's my county card. Here's some resources. I make eye contact when I can't have a conversation to let them know that I see them. I give them a genuine smile, not the fake one that sometimes we do. Right? Because I want them to know that someone sees them. Because if you don't give people dignity, they will try and take it. And so in the case of, and this may happen to you because it happens to me quite often, that I'm at a stop sign or at a stoplight, and there is a group of teenagers trying to cross the street. Now, I used to think that they didn't cross the street as quickly as they could because their pants were too low. Right? That's what I thought at first, but I figured out they can really hype those puppies up when it's time to go. Right? But I don't know if this happens, but it seems as though they just, when they get right in front of my car is when they slow down. Right? So they'll be, hustling along and they get in front of my car and then they glare at me. Right? As they're moving really slow. What they don't know is I have really good car insurance. But what they're saying to me is, as a young person, I'm looking at you as an adult because you don't ever see me any other time. And this is the place where I can have some power and control as I cross the street. So I will take my dignity from you at that point. All right? What is honor? Pride. Okay. Honor. Respect. Okay. Who in our society have we said that we will give honor to? Veterans, right? Because they go and they fight wars on our behalf. Servicemen and women, we will give honor to. Our parents and grandparents, we said we will give them honor. So it's respect, but respect at a high level. All right? B, please raise your hand if you can answer yes to these two questions. Raise your hand if you purchased a ticket or you passed a test that made you eligible to be born on this planet. None of us have done anything to bring ourselves here. We all accepted an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. It's disgusting. But we all accepted an invitation to be here. We're trying to figure it out. Right? And we're trying to figure out the last part, which is human. Now, when you look at human in the dictionary, you find interesting things. That it has actual two definitions. One is being a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. Homo sapiens sapien, the one who knows that they know that they exist. The noun. But you also find that human is also an adjective. And what do adjectives do? They describe the noun. All right? So in what ways and what things do we do to try to teach the babies of our species about what it means to be human? What do we expect those baby humans to take on? What characteristics do we expect for them to be included into our human family? So what kinds of things do we teach babies about what it means to be human? That it's okay to make mistakes. What else? To be responsible. What else? What's that? Respect. We teach them respect. What else do we teach them? How to help themselves. To be nice. To be kind. We ultimately teach them the golden rule. Do unto others in the best way that you want them to do unto you. Right? Yeah. And so we offer them dignity, honor, and being human. Now, what I want you to think about is, what if your life was a little bit different than how it's turned out now? What if you went back and you looked over your life and everybody in your life gave you dignity and honor for being human? Not because you could do a thing, not because you were the right size or shape, or you were the right age, but they gave you dignity and honor for being who you are. Would your life be different than it is right now? It's rhetorical. It's rhetorical. But now I want you to think about the people that we work with. What if in the interaction that we have with them, we can guarantee them that they will get dignity and honor because of who they are? Might that be a life changer? Because I can imagine, that there's some, it's funny, I was doing some work with Columbia Heights, and there was a church that had a lot of Hispanic congregants. And so the congregation, the Hispanic congregation, felt that the police were targeting them for racial profiling. And so they felt, there was this unjust stuff and all this stuff. And so guess what we did as the diversity coordinator for Anoka County in Columbia Heights? We sat down and talked with them. And guess what our number one tool was when we came to sit down and talk about their perceptions of what was going on? Dignity and honor because they exist. And you will be surprised that the lessons that your grandparents tried to teach you and your parents tried to teach you about how to relate with human beings, that stuff actually works. Being nice and being kind to people actually works. But here's the funny thing. dignity and honor, because I've often heard people say, well, if you want respect from me, or if you want dignity or honor from me, you got to earn it. Has anyone ever heard someone say you have to earn my respect? Right? The funny thing about that is that respect can never be earned. Because if you ask, individuals, if I do this, this, and this, is that respect? They may say, yeah, or they may go, no, you need to do this, this, and this. Which means that there's actually no rubric, no ruler at which I can measure respect. And so respect and dignity and honor has to be given and not earned. All right? And the biggest trick is we have to give respect to people who are being disrespectful to us. It is not authentic respect until it costs us something. And the funny thing is, people will say, well, I'm going to stand up for myself because I don't want to be a doormat. Has anyone ever heard someone say that? Yeah. Which I think